Welcome to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds. Hello people, coming to you from London, UK and out to the universe. I'm Paul Obitelli and this is edition 45 of THA Talks, brought to you by Theo-Humanist Arts. Here at THA Talks we bring you weekly shows and all the best interviews we can get our sticky mitts on. Just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. Our talks include news, conspiracies, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion and much more. If you'd like to get hold of us and send us any of your thoughts or ideas for the show, maybe a request for potential guests, you can do so by emailing info@thatalks.com. Again, that's info@thatalks.com. Also, if you like what we're doing here, which we hope you do, you can subscribe using our RSS feed or through various podcast directories like iTunes or Stitcher. You can visit our website again for more details on that. Thanks for those who came to the Ruskimir bookshop on Good Street last Friday for the Matthew Hall presentation on Paracon UK. It was a very good evening, lots of fun, lots of chatter, and we're going to look forward to Paracon UK. Don't forget to check out paraconuk.co.uk for more updates on that. Right now I am joined by a surge from a dramaturge. He is back. It's David Parry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Obitelli. It's nice to be back, and how are you?
Well, I'm good now you're back. It just wasn't the same without you last time, buddy.
Well, you handled it brilliantly, dare I say, but I must admit it's a cosy, lovely, warm, fuzzy feeling to be back.
There you go. Well, this week we will be speaking with Mary Rodwell, who is a professional counsellor, hypnotherapist, ufologist, researcher and metaphysician. She is the founder and principal of the ACERN, which stands for Australian Close Encounter Research Network, and she's recognised internationally as one of the leading researchers in the UFO and Contact phenomenon.
Oh, Paul, just like Napoleon XIV, I really have something to say. They're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, ho-hee, ha-ha, to the funny farm, where life is beautiful all the time, and I'll be happy to see the nice young men in their clean white coats, along with the aliens. Ho ho, hee hee, ha ha. Thank you.
I think that makes up for last week when you're away, though.
I confess this fascinates me. The connection with serious psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, and this phenomena is a personal interest of mine. I am not saying, our wonderful listeners, I understand it. I'm not giving any theories. She is an accomplished physician, and I look forward to speaking to her in her own right. But it is genuinely fascinating material.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of them subjects where you've got a lot of avenues of research to go down. Some people swear that the physical side of it all is very real, that they're dealing with physical beings that have contacted them, and then there's also the sort of astral, the non-physical experiences that some people have, which kind of brings us back to ancient religious records of angels, and in Islam the jinn and that kind of stuff, where you can look at the modern day and you can think, well, maybe these guys are the same kind of beings as people were interacting with back then. But it's something that certainly raises a lot of opinions and perspectives, so to speak. So, interesting stuff.
Let's go.
Hi, Mary. Thank you for coming on the show.
You're most welcome, Paul. It's a pleasure.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and it's a bit wet here in Queensland today, which you know all about in the UK, don't you?
Oh, we do indeed. We've been quite lucky the last few days. We've had some nice sunshine as we're sort of heading into our autumn, so long may that continue. Today's subject, we here at THA Talks, we're always intrigued by the UFO and alien subject. We really are. You kind of bring something new to the table in that you work with many different cases, many different people who have had contact and experiences. Could you tell us what you're doing now and how it all came about?
Well, I'm actually principal of an organisation called ACERN, which is the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network, which I began about 1997, primarily because as a professional counsellor in private practice, I had all sorts of people coming to see me with what I call the normal everyday kind of relationship issues, etc., or grief issues or whatever. But this time a gentleman came to see me and he said, Mary, he said, there are support groups for everything but this. For this, they just think you're a loony. And this gentleman basically told me about feeling he was being taken on board spacecraft with his whole family, also waking up with marks on his body. And he said, you know, my partner's terrified and the relatives won't come to the house because they think it's demons. Can you help? And that was the start of the rabbit hole for me.
Okay, and you put these guys under hypnosis and find out more about what they've been going through and their experiences, right?
Initially, what I hear from them is their conscious recall, and sometimes that's, you know, that is sufficient for them to just be heard and not be judged. But if they have what we call missing time, or they've had experiences where they want to explore it from a deeper level, then I will do hypnosis to help them understand.
Okay, well, if you go on the internet and fish about, you find a lot of cases of people being enlightened, like light beings, very inspirational experiences out there. But you also find that there's some very dark, sinister agendas that people are claiming that some of these beings are supposed to be doing. You know, there's cases of them prodding us, experimenting with us, and taking us without our consent and stuff. So some of it may be a little bit frightening. What's your perspective on all that?
Well, I've tried only to work with my main research myself, which is working with over 2,500 cases from all over the globe. And what I try to do is look for patterns of experience. So there are many things that the public doesn't know about that are part of this experience. But there does seem to be a huge range from going from what they would, you know, some people see as an abduction that's terrifying and traumatic, to those that actually feel that they are, you know, that our ancestors and they're connected to them and call them their star family. So this rather confusing and complex phenomena seems to suggest for some people it has been very traumatic. Sometimes it's traumatic because of the unknown rather than what's really happened. The mere fact that you're woken up at night and feel presences and don't know what's happening to you is scary enough. It doesn't mean that they're evil or bad necessarily. It means that you don't know what the darn hell's going on here, which is scary in itself. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's something terrible happening to you. It just means you don't know what's happening to you. So what I've discovered with some people with hypnosis that, in fact, yes, they've been taken up on craft and there are procedures done. And sometimes these procedures are more like medical examinations where they are checked out. Other times there's even healing procedures. But others feel that you know, they've had intrusive things happen as well. So my job isn't to tell people what to believe. My job is to help that person understand it from their perspective in whatever way makes sense to them. And there does seem to be a broad range of experiences, primarily because there appears to be many different intelligences interacting with us. And some of them are not, you know, are humanoid, some are, you know, mantid insect-like beings. There's the greys, the zetas, there's reptilian-type beings, there's cat beings, there's energy beings, there's light beings. So with all of them, there seems to be a lot of different agendas. So you can't say, oh, well, they're all good or they're all bad or anything like that, because we don't know enough to make judgments. All we know is that they're certainly interacting with us as a species on this planet.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, looking back through history, there's been reports of angels, and through Islam, the jinn, demons, all this kind of stuff. And it's almost like, you you could look at a lot of these modern cases with aliens, greys and so on as a similar kind of phenomenon. Do you find most of the cases you deal with are more kind of astral, otherworldly experiences as opposed to a more physical, three-dimensional experience?
Not necessarily. I mean, there are lots of people that do have the more astral type interactions, and some of those that have contact may have both physical interactions on the craft and astral ones as well. Sometimes that, their body is taken and certain procedures are done. Sometimes they're taken, with their essence or soul self to experience different things. So there's a really big range, and it can be both for an individual. Sometimes they are literally missing from their beds, and other times they have had an experience, but they're not aware that their body's been taken. So it seems to be all of that and possibly other things we don't even understand.
Right. What about cases like, let me think of something, there was that film, Fire in the Sky, about the Travis Walton's case where the woodcutters were all, well, I think one of them were taken. Have you spoken to him before or had any dealings with that case?
Actually, I've met Travis a number of times. I even did an interview where he did one as well. What's interesting about Travis and his experiences is he says that the actual movie of his story wasn't accurate. Right. They sensationalized it. And he has come to the conclusion that these beings meant him no harm at all. He just didn't understand because he was in fear. And the interesting thing with Travis too, he seems to be almost far more aware on lots of different levels, that he himself, admits that there's a lot more understanding now from different levels of awareness that he didn't have prior to his encounters. And that's the one thing I want to say, is that people that have these experiences do change. They change in some incredible ways, and in many ways quite transformative in the sense that they want to live more holistic lifestyles. They often, change their diet. Many of them get interested in wanting to take care of the planet. They seem to have almost like a spiritual awakening in some cases, which to me is quite fascinating, that this experience can actually be part of a catalyst for change.
Yeah, I mean, I came across his version of events before I watched the film, and although the film was really good, I did notice that the aliens were very much depicted as these very spiteful, nasty, manipulative, frightening creatures. And it did make me think at the time, it's like, well, hang on, I haven't actually heard Travis describe them like this, so I think it was a case of them trying to really sell the movie. And I think that was going on.
I think truthfully, Paul, they do that a great deal. And a lot of the movies, Signs about crop circles, Abduction of the Fourth Kind, are absolutely horror movies, and they're made up and they're fantasy. And they're not actually a reflection of what researchers are finding about those particular phenomena. Yeah,
it's almost like trying to make people think that anything that is alien to fear and not trust it, and so, which, I mean, I think fair enough. You got to have a sort of a self-defense way around you, because if there is an alien, you might not know much about them, but at the same time, the human way is often get a gun ready and prepare to shoot rather than let them come in peace, kind of thing,
We're rather an aggressive species, and that's something that I think we'll all acknowledge, given the wars on this planet at the moment. Yeah. Let's face it, we kill it. People are killing one another for different belief systems. I mean, how primitive is that? So I do think we need an upgrade, to be honest. Yeah. To realise that we're all human beings, and actually we should do a bit more of the love and light, and realise that it doesn't matter what you believe, but it's more about caring for each other and being accepting of one another.
Yeah, I think if they look down and seeing us fighting over the things we are fighting about, I don't think it's going to fill them with much eagerness to come down and say hello, I don't think. We have had a guest on recently called Simon Parks. He's involved in politics as a Labour counsellor, and he's had... he doesn't describe his experiences as abduction as so much, more a case of contact, where he's been taken in and given certain knowledge and experiences he's had since he was very, very young. Have you spoken to Simon Parks, or do you know about him?
Actually, I have had quite a long interaction with Simon over a number of years.
Right.
And he contacted me. And what's fascinating is there are certain parts of his experience with the mantid beings that are identical to some of the people that I work with here. And one of them is an 8-year-old boy that actually says similar things about the manta that Simon talks about. And what's fascinating is that it's little details even that this little 8-year-old has told me and Simon has told me, and they've never corresponded. They don't know, they've never had any interaction yet. Those details are identical. So I find it quite fascinating when you've got an 8-year-old boy who calls the mantid his family in the identical way that Simon Parkes views the mantid as well. And that's just one of the many things that they actually both say similarly, even to the trilling, chirping sound that the mantid makes sometimes. This little boy actually gave me a demonstration of it. So I look for those kinds of similarities that are very unique and not known in the public arena.
Have you ever had any dealings with parallel sort of simultaneous experiences with two people? Because obviously if one person's having an experience, then you can assess their mind and their perception. But when there's two people involved, then obviously it's a slightly different phenomenon because they're both complementing what the other person has experienced. I have heard that cases like this are meant to exist. Have you had any dealings with that?
Certainly. And it's been interesting that I actually did a regression with two people in different parts of Australia who both had this strange dream one night. And as it turned out, I discovered by working with them independently that they'd actually both been on the same craft and were mentioning similar things that I'd found in one as regards the other. I also have had support groups for a number of years. And what's been fascinating is that sometimes a new person would join the support group and they would come in and there would be a look of shock on their face because they will recognize somebody in the room and they've recognized them from being on the craft with them. And that's been a real, an absolute, it's been quite traumatic actually for them to actually see someone that they'd recognized from, something they still hoped was a dream and it wasn't after all.
Yeah, that side of it is something that has very much interested me, that side of it. It's really interesting. I'd like to ask you about the Indigo children, because that is a really interesting one. Who are they? What's the deal with these guys?
Right. Well, one of the things that has been interesting to me as a researcher, particularly when you're looking at the patterns of experience, what you notice is as it's intergenerational, so it's going through family lines. Why is it going through family lines? And it seems to be that each generation is a more aware individual if they've had these encounters. So if you're looking at the different generations from, people in their 70s or 80s, their children will be that little bit more aware and their grandchildren will be even more aware. And so there seems to be a tweaking, a genetic tweaking, if you like, of individuals and children. And the children that are called indigos, there's many names: crystal children, children of light, golden children. There's lots of different names. I call them the generic term star children only because it can get very complicated in how we, work out what upgrades are and what these upgrades are. The most important thing is, though, that there's no doubt in my mind that those that have encounters and it's gone through their family lines, that these new children coming in, I call the new human or the Homo noeticus, are ones that are definitely upgraded from a few of the generations prior to that. And what I mean by that is they're a lot more aware. And I say multidimensionally aware because many of them see energy fields, they see spirits, they seem to have information that they haven't learned from books and this kind of thing. And sometimes it's very complex as well. Like they'll talk about black holes and they'll talk about being taken on spacecraft and learning about the Big Bang and things to do with quantum theory. And we're talking about children 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old that mentioned to me. One young boy told me that he came through a portal in the sun and that when he was 7 or 8, he was given formula to create portals. Now, children of of that age don't know about these kinds of complex subjects, and yet they're talking about them. And these children do not watch, talk shows. They don't read books on this, and yet they're coming out with this complex information. And this is really what I find fascinating, because it seems to be these children all over the world. I get parents writing to me and saying, my son's talking about going on spacecraft and what he learns there. And I had an 8-year-old tell me that he goes up there regularly with a couple of his school friends, and that they are taught how to use their brain waves to in terms of creating things with their mind and doing things with their mind, not only telepathy, but actually moving things with their mind, etc. So these are concepts that the average, child doesn't know anything about, and yet these 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-old children are talking about it. And you've got to say, how on earth can they do that unless it's a reality for them?
Some of the skeptics out there, well, maybe not skeptical is the right word. There's the belief in the military element of it. It's more of a point of view, I guess, and I suppose not to do with so much the intellectual capacity of a lot of these children that you're talking about, but more about the experiences that them and other people have. There's a belief that it could be military created, certain technology or methods for some reason, and that all these experiences that they're going for are in fact just a creation for the military to create this phenomenon for some reason. Have you heard about those claims, and what are your views on that side of it?
Well, I certainly think some people not only have experiences on the craft, but maybe also picked up by covert agencies that have ET technology, which they've reverse engineered, which means they can pick people up in the same way. And they do, and the military abductions, or the MyLab as it's called, and MK Ultra, are without doubt a reality. And I have met and worked with a number of people that have had both types of experiences, and the ones that most traumatize them are the ones by the military, where they've been taken to underground bases and they've been drugged and traumatized, because my understanding is that these covert agencies want to know as much as possible of what goes on when these people are taken up on the spacecraft and what they're taught, so they can get more of a sense, I assume, of what the ETs are up to and what capabilities they're giving or encouraging in people that go up on the craft, because there's no doubt they're encouraging a lot of these multidimensional abilities. Okay,
well, what about crop circles? I know there's that kind of believers and non-believers war that's going on, and it's quite a controversial subject, although a bit of a strange one as well. But where do you stand with the crop circle stuff?
Well, I've been fortunate to connect with a number of crop circle researchers, and some of them I give great credentials to. I've no doubt that some of the crop circles are man-made, and certainly most croppies will say the same. But there's no doubt in my mind that some of them, when you examine them scientifically, there are certain things that require, things like microwave energy to actually create them. And I've seen footage of how quickly a crop circle within seconds is created with balls of light and what have you. And there's so many instances of crop circles. One near Stonehenge, a very famous case, which was literally created within a plane going over it, I think within half an hour in broad daylight, for example. So I've got no doubt it's a real phenomena. And what's interesting too, there are a lot of those with good credentials that are exploring them. And I know a particular scientist that lives in Australia that goes regularly and decodes a lot of these crop circles and can't believe and doesn't understand why other scientists are not doing the same. Well, I suspect some scientists are doing it, but they're not able to come out publicly and say so, because again, it's such a controversial area. And, most of the public is being programmed to believe that Doug and Dave did the 20,000 of them, or however men through history as well have actually done all the crop circles, which is so ludicrous and hilarious. But you'd be amazed at how many people still believe Doug and Dave did all these, even though the fact they're dead now. I think, or at least one of them's dead now or whatever. So no, I think there's no doubt that some of the crop circles are absolutely not created by humans, but are by these intelligences as a way of getting us to take notice. I really believe that.
Okay, David.
Oh, the flower of wisdom still blossoms in Australia. I think I'm falling in love, Paul. You'll have to keep me under control. Mary, I've been an admirer of yours for a very long time. Please take that in a positive sense, not in a negative sense. Your work, your career is absolutely fascinating. I mean, I share, I suppose I was in teaching for years, but there was also a sort of slight thought years back, and I was involved with therapy years back, and I might be moving back into it, actually. I mean, I'm still a member of the Young Club London, and psychosynthesis is one of the sort of therapeutic techniques I'm interested in. You describe yourself as a metaphysician. Now, that's interesting. Certainly, the original phrase metaphysics comes from Aristotle's publisher, ta meta ta physica, and it only meant originally something published after the book The Physics. It came in the Middle Ages, I suppose, to be something like beyond physics. I mean, that's not the original meaning. And so it's a study of ultimates, general principles in philosophy. I think when someone as adept as yourself is using that word, we're looking at sort of a revived meaning, a new meaning. What do you mean by metaphysician? And does that or not fit in with your therapeutic practice?
It absolutely fits in with my therapeutic practice because for me, I think it's time we brought back the connection between the physical world and the spiritual world as one. And this is really, for me, what metaphysics is about. It's about understanding that we live in a third-dimensional programmed reality, but we are actually multidimensional in nature. So it's honoring the broader concept of what reality is, if anybody actually knows what reality is. And I've begun to doubt I have got a clue, really. but what I'm wanting to also convey with that is my openness to what I don't know, which is, the fact that we are not only multidimensional in nature, but we are part of the creation of what we are experiencing in some sense. So that when I work with someone, I'm honoring that part of them. I'm honoring the part of them that isn't physical, the part of them that is consciousness, because it's that part that often gives them the answers that they can't find consciously. When I'm working with someone on through hypnosis, for example, it's like you're pulling in the subconscious, I call the superconscious, the part of them that it goes beyond the limits of what their programmed reality is to access information that gives them a greater understanding. So when I put that in to show that I'm not working purely from a third dimensional model of therapeutic process, even though I'm still honoring, the person-centered understanding that everyone has the knowledge and wisdom to work through their own experiences and understand them in whatever way they need to. The important thing with that is that I probably expand it in a far broader context than it was originally meant, in the sense I really do honor wherever they may go, to whatever dimension or to whatever limit they wish to go, because for me, it's about assisting and facilitating that person's own, if you like, inner wisdom or greater or higher awareness, to give them whatever it is that they need to understand their own personal journey. And so for me, it isn't about interpreting their experiences. It's about them interpreting them in a way that gives them the understanding that makes sense of their experience. And you can't just do that looking through a third dimensional materialistic model, because if you accept that we are greater than our physical body, which most people who have experiences end up having the proof of because of their experiences, then you have to say, okay, so what actually is, why me? What is it all about? And all the big questions come into the fore, where you become the seeker and the seeking to understand your experience. And so my job is really to say, well, I can't judge what that is, but I can help you explore and hold your hand while you explore what makes sense to you and how you choose to experience your encounters, your experience, if that makes sense. I know that sounds a bit long-winded, but it's about showing that, when I talk about Reiki, I know we are multidimensional from my own experience and from those that I work with. And it's showing that I'm not limited by the third dimensional model primarily.
Oh, no, Mary, that's a wonderful answer. I mean, certainly John Mack was moving in that direction in his latter work. And, I can see a genuine usage of that in your own work. It just, I wondered if it was part of your therapeutic practice or it was sort of a separate brand, a separate branch of your own interpretative skills.
It is very much my therapeutic practice because when people come to me, generally because of their experiences, they are aware that they're experiencing more than a third dimensional paradigm in the sense they may see energies, they may see spirits, they may see balls of light going around and strange shapes. They may be seeing physically or through what would be called their third eye. They may be seeing different beings or whatever, and they may be feeling like they're growing crazy. So if I dismiss that as hallucinations and fantasy, well, I'm not going to get very far with helping them, am I? The bottom line is I have worked on that aspect of my own awareness, and I also find now that I through my own understanding, I can at least assist them to gain some handle on what it is that they're experiencing. So, I've been working with a scientist recently who's still struggling with his scientific paradigm, but also seeing orbs of light floating around and saying, Mary, I'm seeing a blue orb of light above your head. What the hell is that? And I'm saying, well, why don't you ask it? Is that crazy? No, it's asking the part of you that is experiencing an awareness greater than we're allowed to believe on this planet, and saying you maybe can find answers if you tap into more of what you're seeing and trusting what feels right to you. So it's about trusting that knowing, and we're not taught to do that. We're taught to think before we speak, rather than in this, you actually think after you've got the information, and then you can work it out. So it's the opposite process, but gives you understanding that maybe you couldn't have through your conscious recall or your conscious understanding.
Oh, Mary, I think you're wonderful. David, get back under control, heavens. What disturbs a lot of people, I think, within the field of psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, as well as outside the field, is that a great many of these experiences are recalled under hypnosis. Hypnosis, of course, being another mystery in itself, I suppose. What's your reaction to that, Mary? How do you see hypnosis? How do you see that as part of the therapeutic process? And do you think that's simply another tool by which people can delve into the subconscious? Or is it sort of an errant way of looking at real information? What do you think of that?
Well, I agree totally with Dr. John Mack. And for those of your listeners that are not aware, that he was a professor of psychiatry at Harvard University. So we're talking about, someone who should, if anyone's going to know about the psychological process, it's got to be Dr. John Mack. And what he says about hypnosis is identical to my own understanding. And he says this: he believes that information gained through hypnosis has far more integrity than conscious recall, because when you go and take somebody into an altered state and you're talking to the subconscious stroke superconscious, there is no editing going on at all. The subconscious is relaying what it is experiencing or seeing in whatever way it may manifest, either through images or feelings, etc. It doesn't judge it at all. We only start to judge information once the conscious mind comes in and says, oh, I can't say that, that's impossible. Oh, that can't be true because that's too weird. Whereas our subconscious doesn't care a stuff what our conscious mind thinks. It will say it as it is. And when you go into experiences with going on to craft or seeing beings or whatever, let's face it, it does appear from the conscious mind almost like science fiction. And believe me, people have experienced things so bizarre and so unusual when I've worked with them that it's very, very hard from the conscious perspective to even believe that that can possibly be real. But what's fascinating is that when they're in it and I say to them, how are you feeling? Because they'll feel, they'll sense. And I'll say, does that resonate with you? They'll actually say to me, yes, it does. Even though it challenges everything to do with their own psychological, cognitive and conscious model. And that to me is telling us, we don't know what we don't know. And and how can we know if we don't honor what an individual is seeing? And that's why I believe hypnosis can reveal amazing things about our greater reality that we won't accept through doing just conscious recall.
So what do you think hypnosis actually is, Mary?
All I can say for me is I think it's a way into our greater awareness, our greater understanding, our multidimensional consciousness or essence. I think it's a way in, it's a doorway. And that's what I rely on. When someone wants answers, it's helping them open that door to that understanding, even although it may challenge everything they've ever believed. Somehow or other, it also seems to make a great deal of sense to them, even if it means they've got to create a new paradigm to cope with it.
Very, very, very interesting indeed. I'll tell you the one problem I've got with all of this type of material. Well, maybe not the material, maybe what the beings are doing, whatever they are, whatever their ontological status is. I mean, I love the idea of an upgrade. I love the idea of all these powers of light rallying in our hour of need, and heavens above, this really does seem to be our hour of need as a human race, doesn't it? However, I think would like to be consulted about any genetic program or upgrade. I tend to be old school. I mean, I see something sinister in this. It's like being treated like livestock. The farmer comes along and thinks, oh, we need some even better chickens or more yieldful cows. So that's an element to all of this, I must admit, I find disturbing. You said earlier, of course, that we are possibly dealing with different powers, different forces, and they have different outlooks and agendas. But, surely even if those positive beings, energies, forces are doing that, that doesn't put them in a good light. What do you think of that, Mary?
I think on the surface of it, it certainly looks like we're being used as a kind of lab rat. But what's fascinating is when you take people into that altered state, and one of the questions that I always ask them is, have you, on any level, consented to any of these experiences? And what's fascinating is they will often say yes before I came here. They believe, many of them seem to access an understanding that they've made some form of agreement with the intelligences that they're working with to in some way assist them by coming into human form and assisting them. And I'll just quote this from a young lady who has done a lot of the drawings, and I use her information a great deal because I really feel that she's put the nail on the head. And she said, this is a quote from her name's Tracy Taylor, and she said, I was fearful of my experiences because I didn't know why. But she said, there's always been an equal exchange. I helped them achieve their genetic goals, and in return, I received my healing and psychic abilities, and my understanding of life has been enhanced. They also protect me when I ask them to. But understanding can be overshadowed by fear, which stems from limited human perceptions to those experiences. So she sees it as a trade with these different beings, but also many of them believe they've come in from some of those star systems into human form to assist this planet evolve. So there seems to be a far more complex relationship than we realize, that we just see from a human perspective, it's us and them. Whereas I'm actually, one 8-year-old said to her mum, but mum, we are the aliens. So what level do you want to understand this? What level do you actually want to explore what this interaction is? I think it's a lot deeper than we can often perceive because of our limited human reactions to anything that is different to us. Let's face it, we're pretty bad at accepting any kind of difference. We can't even accept other cultures, let alone those from other planets. So it almost seems like this is the biggest challenge of all, to look at this from a deeper level, which means that we may actually be them and they're us, but we're just having a different a virtual reality. I don't know.
Oh, Mary, you're taking therapy into whole new dimensions, no pun intended. I think you're an incredibly pioneering and generous-hearted spirit. Paul, save me. I'm falling in love. Throw some questions at Mary.
You charmer, you, David. What case would you say is the most fascinating case you've come across in your work?
Oh, my goodness, I've got so many that are fascinating. I actually love my work because it's showing me how little I know, and I love that. I love finding out how little I know about what's really going on.
Yeah.
I think some of the most fascinating for me are the children. I mean, why? Because the children haven't read the books, they haven't listened to talk shows, and so there's a certain kind of clarity and integrity with the children's experiences, and something that's just the last few days is a lady that's written to me from the US talking about her 7-year-old son. And he has been looking at the drawings that Tracy Taylor has done, the geometric drawings, and he's telling her what they mean. Now, this is a 7-year-old boy basically interpreting these complex geometric drawings, and he's talking about spacecraft going through portals and how the ETs are going to arrive. And the mother is being blown away by this. And I'm actually finding, it quite amazing that we've got these young children talking about, such things as portals, for example, let alone how different craft behave and their part in it. When you've got an 8-year-old telling you that he communicates with animals, and his mission here is to help humans understand animals and our connection to them all. That's what I love. I love getting information from the youngsters because to me, that is absolutely profound.
Okay, so where do you see it all going in the future? Do you see that it's going to get somewhere where it's going to develop, that it's going to be household knowledge, we're going to be experiencing these beings on a wider scale, more people are going to be interacting with them? Or do you think it's just going to go along as it is and it's going to be a struggle? Where do you see things going?
Well, I think it's inevitable. The way things are going now, well, first of all, and if you know about the truth embargo, which I'm sure you do, we have ETs in human form wandering around this planet for a start, and you wouldn't know the difference unless they introduce themselves as such. So they're already here in the humanoid ones anyway, and there are many others that are interacting with people all over the planet. I mean, the mere fact that I'm getting daily, 30 emails a day from people from all over the globe telling me about their interactions. And a lot of these people don't even speak English, but have tapped into my work or the fact that I support people. It's not going to come from the governments outright. They've got too much to lose. It's going to come from the people that finally say, I'm fed up of pretending I'm living in a reality that isn't really the truth, that I'm having these interactions. I am getting emails from academics, from scientists, from medical personnel, from psychologists, psychiatrists, teachers, nurses, housewives, farmers, all telling me they're having interactions and their children are having interactions. There's got to come a point where enough people coming out with this is going to make, it's the tipping point, the 100th monkey, I think, we're very close to that, I believe, because just by the numbers that are telling me, I mean, I'm working with an attorney at the moment from Miami to create a new foundation called FREE, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And some of the credentials in those that are part of FREE, we've got, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, for example, we've got an astrophysicist, Dr. Rudy Shield from Harvard University. We've got a whole range, Linda Morton Howe, we've got Whitley Strieber, we've got physicists, we've got MDs, all part of this new organization, which is saying, look, we know this is real. And now it's time that we bring the credentials behind this so that we can actually start researching it and actually putting out to the public credible information so that at last people can own the fact that this is a reality. If you looked in the supermarket right now, you'd probably find that anything up to 30% of those people in that supermarket are having things going on they never tell anybody. Because we're all multidimensional. We're all experiencing things out of the box. But nobody wants to say the elephant's in the room. And it's about darn time that we get that and people start owning it. And it's going to happen because I'm just getting too many people telling me about their experiences. You can't keep it silent forever, can you?
Yeah, well, I do think people they worry too much about how they're perceived from the outside, be it a UFO experience, a ghost experience, or just like a spiritual feeling and something that they've gone through. People just tend to worry about how others may perceive them as crazy or laugh at them, and they just keep quiet about it. So that's definitely a factor, I think. When you talk about aliens looking just like us, walking among us and so on, obviously there's, through history and even today, there's hierarchies, people groups, bloodlines, royal bloodlines, so on, that have ruled over for a long time and had more power. Do you think that this may be a part of that there actually could be alien interacting on that kind of level? Obviously that these beings have got more intelligence, more power, or maybe some knowledge that they know that we don't know about, and that this is the extraterrestrial side of things. Do you believe in that kind of stuff?
Oh, I think without doubt that we have 223 genes in our DNA that are a sideways insertion of genetic material, all related to higher psychological functioning for a start. So we know that we have been genetically engineered by some intelligences. Retired Sergeant Major Robert Dean, who's in his 80s now, that was part of, who saw the cosmic top secret information where the military had isolated. There were at least, I don't know, something like 50 odd different species visiting this planet. One of the interesting things he said after he admitted he'd been taken up on the craft himself was he was shown that we have at least 12 different species of genetics from, if you like, extraterrestrial DNA in our DNA itself. There are many anomalies in our DNA that many geneticists can't say. And one whistleblower geneticist that wrote in the intervention theory of Lord Pye's book actually said, look, we've seen where certain genes have been spliced and changed and put together. He said, we know that this has happened in human DNA. So we've got it. Now, some of those may very well, and I know where you're leading with this is, some of the bloodlines what is known as the reptilian bloodlines or whatever. Look, I certainly think that, the Maoris admit to it. The Maoris say they've got an extra gene and it comes from the reptilians, and that's where they hail from. And they admit that that's where their genetic heritage is. So, it's that without question, it's there. And we've got a part of our brain that's called the reptilian brain. So, we've all got that, but maybe some have it in a greater quantity in others. And maybe they are the ones that have been able to be that bit more aggressive and have ended up being the ones that have ruled countries and may very well be part of what a lot of the conspiracy theorists, and I'll say fact because I think it's more fact than theory, that we are perhaps ruled by the more aggressive and more dominant individuals on this planet, and they may very well have a high percentage of these very aggressive genes. And so I don't really have a problem with that, because I find that normal people don't want to take over the planet and rule other people or deny them the things that they need. So what kind of person wants to take advantage of everybody else? And you have to say, well, what's in their genetics that leads them to want to have that power and be that greedy?
Yeah, I just look at animal evolution, and if you look back in time, humans seem to be the only species that are basically changing all the time. If you look at an elephant or a lion, say 2,000 years ago, it looked the same, it lived in the same surroundings, it did the same things, whereas if we look at a human being back at that time, it's completely different, and we seem to be the only species that are doing that. That kind of evolving. So for me, that's an indication that something has made us different on this planet. So I look at the film Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, and that whole interaction where something's affected us at some point, and that's have you watched that? I take it you've seen that film before.
I certainly have,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of truth in many of the films that are out there, the sci-fi films or so-called sci-fi films. And I think that they have been deliberately put out to give us clues. And I believe, actually, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was based on real events, which is an interesting one because it makes a lot of sense to me. And it certainly triggered many people who watched it, who'd had experiences simply by watching it. And there's lots of triggers in some of these. The whole series of Taken had huge amounts of triggers in it as well. So we're getting the information, but it's covert, and it's and I think it's all ways of getting us our psyche ready for some more overt contact. Perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly a believer in the whole alien and UFO thing. I've never claimed to know exactly what's going on, but I think that the saying "there's no smoke without fire" is certainly something relevant in this field. David, is there anything else that you would like to add as we approach the wrap-up of this?
I really wish this interview had taken place under different circumstances. To our listeners, it's early Sunday morning, so I'm not at my best. And poor Mary's at the other end of the spectrum. I think it's late evening in Australia. Also, Mary, I have a confession to make. We got horribly drunk with Matt Hall, the founder of Paracon UK, on Friday. And at this time of life, not that I'm ancient, it takes longer to recover than it used to. A couple of things quickly. Do you ascribe to a particular school, a particular type of psychotherapy, or do you think that's passé?
I would just say that I'm eclectic. The bottom line is I still, though, keep to the very basic therapeutic model, is knowing that everybody has within them their own answers and their own understanding of how they can, work through their lives. And with that, I probably just take it to a broader perspective than most. And also because I do work with people who are generally very intuitive through having these multidimensional experiences. So it's pulling on that other part of them to assist them with those answers so that they're not dismissing those intuitive knowings and feelings that they get, and really encouraging them to trust that, because I do think there's another part of us that gives us the answers when we let go of having to try and work it out from a third dimensional perspective, because for me, that is will never give us the answers that we're seeking. The only way is to trust that inner knowing, that inner wisdom that will. And I said, if you have, even if it comes to things like past lives or whatever, it's about, you are the master of your own human experience and reality. Nobody has the right to discriminate or to tell you something is real or not real. And what right has anyone got to say my reality is better than your reality? I mean, to me, that's a nonsense. So I'm an absolute rebel, as you can probably hear. Because I'm just over what I think is a very limited psychological model that is put out traditionally, because it's not honouring the multidimensional nature of us as a species or human consciousness in the way that it needs to.
Oh, well said, you. Just never stop being a rebel. Never, never, never. I don't think you could anyway, Mary. One last thing. I mean, I think we've both noticed that certain trends in psychotherapy counselling are beginning to border on the esoteric in a positive sense. They're beginning to sound more like some of the classical esoteric traditions. What do you think of that?
I think it's about time, because interestingly, I connect with a lot of psychologists and a few psychiatrists as well, that are generally, because they've had experiences, which is hilarious. And because of that, they open their model to embrace more of of what, these experiences and others, spiritual experiences, whether it's near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. It can be a range of those. People that, will talk about being walk-ins, or whether they talk about having dual consciousness hybrids. To be honest, until we start researching that and looking at that, we're not going to have a clue about what's really going on, because that's part of what that person understands about themselves. So instead of always pathologizing anything that's out of the box, maybe we just actually need to start looking at why people are experiencing this and trying to understand it, rather than saying, here's a pill, with any luck it'll go away. Really, really primitive, isn't it?
Oh, that was extraordinarily well said. Paul, Mary, thank you so much.
There is one case I always have to ask about. It's the 2007 case where Ray Bowyer, the commercial airline pilot, very experienced guy, saw a massive UFO in Guernsey. Mm-hmm. Have you spoken to him at all or dealt with the case?
No, I didn't. But it's amazing the numbers of airline pilots that have seen things, and military pilots as well. Yeah. And when you get radio, journalists or the media say to me, where's the evidence and what have you? I said, look, what evidence are you going to actually believe? I mean, there's 2 presidents that have seen UFOs for a start. That's not a bad start. And then we go into all the others, from celebrities to airline pilots to military personnel that have seen craft, seen the bodies and what have you. I mean, just how much evidence do you need? It becomes a nonsense in the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it comes back to that thing where people don't like to others to perceive them in a crazy way, kind of thing. I've been in rooms where I've just cringed myself because I can just see it go down like a lead balloon, this kind of stuff with some people, because it's almost like it's not that they don't believe it, it's that they can't believe it. And there's nothing wrong with keeping an open mind, It's a big, vast universe out there, and a lot we don't know about it, and it's simple as that.
Well, I think the important thing is to put it out there no matter what, and people that are receptive or open will at least, if you're coming from a place of integrity, they may actually just listen, even if they may still have a certain skepticism, but at least you're speaking your truth. And I've found that no matter how bizarre the information may be to some people, if you say it from a place of integrity and a place of your own certitude and truth, even though it may challenge them, there'll be part of them will notice the fact that you're not trying to proselytize, you're not trying to push the information on me, you're just speaking your truth. And you never know, those small little seeds may grow. And that's what I always hope when I talk like this.
Okay, well, we are pressed for time now. Is there any projects or books or anything you'd like to tell our listeners about so they know how to follow your work and check up with what you're doing?
Well, the main thing is to let them know about FREE, the new organisation that is bringing in a multidisciplinary team to actually start researching this in a way that we hope will bridge the gap between the old paradigm and the new. And I'm very excited about it. So anyone who wants to know about it, please get in touch with me and I will send them the information. But thank you so much, guys, for your wonderful questions. And I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you.
As have we. It's fascinating stuff, and we wish you all the best with your work.
Thank you. Take care and enjoy your cup of teas.
Take care, Mary.
Mary Rodwell.
Oh, Paul, wasn't she wonderful? An extraordinary person, and it was a privilege to talk to her.
Yeah, well, I guess it's good that there are people like Mary out there, because I guess if you do have these experiences, you might feel a little bit lost, because it's not as if the NHS are going to sort you out or someone like that. It can probably be quite lonely. So it's very interesting, very interesting.
Well, it's revived my sort of allegiance with the therapy mob. I mean, when I was with them all those years back, they were big-hearted, stout people with good minds, and I think more power to all of them. Just one thing for our listeners, I think I said good evening to you in our intro, but of course it's actually Sunday morning now that we're doing this.
Oh, I didn't notice, but it is. But that's Sunday morning for you.
The mysteries of the podcast. Oh my God!
Actually, I think you said good afternoon, Paul, if I remember rightfully. So a little bit closer, but there you go. It is Sunday morning, and it is what it is.
I'm only worried about the guy on Facebook that keeps telling me I sound like Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff.
Old horror movie star with a damn fine British accent.
Oh, well, I'm not sure I heard him, but he could be right. He probably is.
Well, I'm available for bar mitzvahs and voice parts.
Okay, anyway, coming up, we've got Darren Storer on his new book, The Recusant Who Never Recanted. More brain food from Anthony Peake. We will be going into ancient Indian astrology with Prakasha Dashra from India. And then we'll have Mark Wolf will be coming on the show, Lon Milo Duquette. And we've got plenty of things planned up as we lead up to the end of the year. So stay tuned. Thanks again for tuning in, folks. It's been a pleasure. And no doubt we'll be speaking with you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.
Chowsy, chowsy.